All right, so I'm going to do this video. No one really asked for me to do this video, but I wanted to kind of piggyback off of advice I would give to young African American men, and then kind of what would be the case now. It's kind of framing it, I guess, from when you are, I don't know, like 17, 18, I guess, up until you probably get out of college. So let's say 22, 23, something like that. And then I kind of was talking about how, some folks choose military, some choose trade schools, some choose college, that type of thing. So I'm going to say probably 25 or so. So 25 onward, even up until now, my age. There's some things I think folks should do, and things that some of these I've done, some I haven't done, but I'm hoping to do, that I've always thought about. They kind of piggyback off of some of the things before, but I think that young black men should also focus. And people will probably ask, why just young black men? Well, because a lot of times there's not a lot of guidance there. There's not a lot of information that's been given. And for me, since I am a black man, I want to be able to give back to my community. I've done it in a couple of different ways, and so this is one of the ways I want to do that. There's a lot of negative, and there's a lot of other stuff that just doesn't. It's not productive. So I feel like one of the best ways to counteract that is some of the things that I did to move forward. Doesn't mean that it's going to necessarily work for you that way. Doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be followed to a certain degree, but there's certain things that are key. One of the things I think that I'm noticing is that it seems like we're in a time where people feel like they're entitled for stuff. Like I'm entitled to have this position just because. And that's something that is a completely different thing than when I was coming up. It was, you have to bust your butt in order to get what you needed to get. And if you worked hard at it, and as long as you were treated fairly, then, that's one thing. It's one thing if you worked hard and you were not treated fairly and, people were trying to hold you down. That's different. But now it seems like it's just kind of this whole entitlement. Like, hey, I was born, so now, I deserve all of these other things. And I don't have to put any sort of effort into it. Sweets is out there with Zara and Zoe messing around. So you're going to hear them scream. You're going to hear Noelle say, shh, stop. But anyhow, that's besides the point. Some of the things I think that's important is to continue to invest. And these are things that people can't really take away from you. The stock market is so underrated when it comes to the black community in general. And I think that that's one of the areas that you really should focus on, at least learn about, because there's a lot of people who really didn't do a 9-to-5 job, invested in the stock market, and they kind of live off their own dividends. I mean, there are people who have done that, and they continue to invest, and they're smart with it, and they make their money work for them. One of the things that I've learned just by when I went to school and went into business and all of that, business school, was you want your money to work for you. I remember them telling us about Bill Gates, because at the time Bill Gates was the richest man in the world, and they were saying something to the effect of he was making $20 million a night. So he would go to sleep, and when he woke up the next day, he had made $20 million. Now, this was a while ago. I don't know what it is now, and I don't know if that was an exact accurate statement, but I saw that, and I remember the professor talking about how Bill Gates, literally, his money is working. Basically, his money's working for him. And that is something that really stood out for me. Not everyone is going to be able to do like Jeff Bezos and have an Amazon, or they're going to be like Zuckerberg and have a Facebook that takes off. Or like Bill Gates, who has a software that people use and platforms that people use. But you can do other things that will give you a decent return. The stock market is one of those. And you're going to make mistakes. You're going to basically not know what you're doing. And that's kind of the whole thing. But once you get into the stock market, it becomes more than just numbers. In my case, it's more than just numbers, but you pay attention to the economy. You pay attention to things that are going on, because then it kind of lets you know, like, should I be concerned? Should I not be concerned? What's going on? And it gets you a little bit more involved in the decision making process that goes on in politics, because a lot of that can influence the stock market, or world events can influence the stock market. So it is a teaching tool, but it also helps you gain wealth. So I think the stock market is very underrated in our community, and it's something that you should definitely start taking classes in. And it's never too late to do that. Another one that I think people don't take advantage of, but it's more of a long-term process, are bonds. When you invest in bonds or purchase bonds, you're basically taking a hit on the front end, right? So you're going and you're buying bonds, and you're spending the money for that. That money is gone, but it's actually being put into a safe place, and you're able to get that money back once the bond matures. I had a bond that I forgotten about. I got it, and I was going to do this plan where I would get bonds so often, and I forgot about it. And then I would remember throughout the years, because it takes years for it to mature. And then finally, when it did mature, I didn't know where it was. So I lost it. It has survived through a past marriage and all of that. And I remember asking Noelle, "Do you know where they are?" And so she's like, "Oh, it's here." And I'm like, "Great!" I cashed it in, and I had so much extra interest on it because it went past the whole maturity point. It almost doubled what I bought it for, right? So my point in that is that bonds are a safe bet. When you learn about the whole, bond market and how that stuff works, and the difference between a junk bond and all these other stuff, then you'll understand kind of more how money works, right? Junk bonds are basically these things that are very controversial, kind of. Either it will break you or it will make you. And it's kind of very volatile, When you're talking about U.S. Treasury bonds, these are bonds that are not junk bonds. They're very secure. But it takes a long time, unlike junk bonds, which you can make money quick or you can lose money quick. With these particular bonds with the U.S. government, you're not going to lose the money. You're going to gain money, but it takes a long time for that to mature. This is something that's great for kids. When you have kids, get them several bonds, because by the time they get old enough to really care about it, then that's enough for them to cash out and do whatever they need to do. However, you want to be smart and have them to continue to invest that money. This is the way I look at it is this is money that you're not even, this is money that you're not even missing out on. You've already spent it. You're not thinking about it. It's already gone. And this is money that you can reinvest. The reinvesting part is you can buy more bonds, you can buy more stocks, you can do a lot of different things, or you can start buying into real estate. And this kind of tailors off into that part of it. Real estate is something that is kind of, it can be very, very lucrative, but it can also be very bad. It just depends. Most of the time you're going to do fairly well as long as you know what you're doing. When you get into things like flipping, it can be kind of, you don't know. Because you can go into a house that looks totally fine, you can get inspections done, but inspections don't tell you every single thing. Because behind those walls, you don't know what's going on. You know what I mean? You don't know. You don't know about the plumbing necessarily. You can get someone to do sewer scopes and they can check out the plumbing and things like that. But the plumbing in the walls, they don't check. You don't know. So when you start to, it's kind of like a car engine. An engine can fail for whatever reason, and they can tell you kind of an idea what may be going on until they start going into it deeper, and they're like, oh, it's going to cost more because there's several things wrong. When you're flipping a home, that can be the case. One of the more easier things, but it doesn't make as much money, is land. I think as young black men, you should always own land. Land is something that has a massive value. Not necessarily from the financial standpoint of it, but just from a historical standpoint alone. Owning land is something that you should do. And I don't care what city you're in. You can be in New York City or you can be in, Mudlick, Kentucky. I think that you should, no matter how big the city, there's always land available. You may have to drive for several hours in the case of New York or Boston or DC, Chicago or, Philadelphia or Dallas or Houston. You may have to drive a little bit out to get to it, but have land. You don't have to put anything on it. You don't have to build on it. You don't have to do anything, right? Owning land is something that you should always do. And I'm going to tell you the reason why. First off, some people will take land and they will try to put amendments on it. They will try to put homes on it, or they will put a farm on it, or what have you, but you don't have to do that. A lot of times, in some areas, they will make sure that you mow it. So if you are in an area, kind of like where my mom lives, it's a rural area, but she's still close enough to a lot of population. So there's a lot of neighbors, there's a highway that runs right there. So her field has to be mowed periodically. She can't just let it grow and be unkept. She has to make sure it's mowed, otherwise there's a fine. There's some places where there's no such thing. No one's going to really see it. It's in the middle of nowhere. You can just let it go. And those are probably properties that should catch your attention. The reason why I say go and get some land, even if it's an acre. Now, I'm not saying go get a lot in a city, because that, you know what I mean? That's not, you could do that, but that's more for development of some sort. I'm talking about farmland, vacant land, someplace that may have a barn or a shed or a house or whatever. Find the cheapest land that you can get, and land that's not just on a hillside. You want to make sure that you look at it and that it's not swampland, and that it's not, land that's on the side of a mountain and you can't really put anything on it. It's just because there's some of that's for sale. There's land that you can't even stand on. It's so sloped that you'll fall. So you want to make sure you actually have something that is attractive. And so most of what's going to be out there is going to be that. It's important to have land because you can pass that down generation to generation. No one may never want to live there because it may be in the middle of nowhere, but it adds to family wealth. It adds to your wealth. If you ever needed to have a loan, let's say you want to start your own business, but you don't have $10,000, you can go to a bank and use that land as collateral. You can say, look, you know what, I actually own land. Because you can technically, for example, this house, I could put this house up and use it for collateral, or the home in New Mexico, use it, both of them for collateral. But if something doesn't go right and I can't pay that, I lose both. In the case of land that has nothing on it that you really care too much about, you can use that land as collateral. And if the business tanks and you can't pay the money back, you lose the land, which sucks, but you're not losing your home. Does that make sense? So whatever you put up as collateral, you're basically saying, I'm gambling with it, kind of. There's a chance I may lose it, but I'm hoping I don't, but there's a chance that I can. But it shows that you have something that's worth something that the banks can use to say, we'll give you a certain amount of money for you to do whatever you need to do with, right? So it helps you in that aspect if you ever have aspirations to actually own your own business. Owning land is something that I think is very, very key. So I'll go back to some of the things I talked about earlier that I think that young black men should do. Before getting involved deeply into a lot of other stuff, I talked about going and traveling and doing all that type of stuff. I think that's something you should definitely do. And get all of that out of your system. Then what I would do is try to save as much money as possible. The more money that you have that's liquid, the more money that you actually have physical money, I don't have any on me, but paper money that you actually have that's in a bank, the better you are. The more money that you have in things that are kind of tied up, like bonds or stock market or what have you, the better. Retirement accounts, IRAs, the more of those that you have helps you in terms of taxes even, but it's good to have because you will have something for yourself when you retire. So these are places where you should start plugging your money into, and I think things like the stock market can help you because, again, when you get a dividend check, just reinvest that money instead of buying another stock. Maybe you want to put that, get a retirement account. Maybe you want to go and, if it's big enough, purchase some land. There's land that you can find that's for an acre sometimes, and it's only $1,000. An acre's pretty big. So to me, you probably want to choose some place that's close by. Like, I'm not going to choose land that's in Delaware because that's way on the other side of the country. But I may find land that's 2, 3, 4 hours outside of here that I don't really care to visit. I may check on every now and again. But if I don't go to it, it's not like it's going to just be a problem. You know what I mean? It's not an active running farm. But look at it this way. If things go bad, if the economy goes bad, you lose your job, God forbid you lost your home, you at least have land to go to. Now, you may have to pitch a tent, but you have something to go to, and it's yours. No one can take it from you. So, again, I would say stock market is something you want to do, definitely. Learn about it for sure. Make sure that you definitely have a retirement account of some sort, several. Make sure that you get bonds. Bonds are safe. It takes a while for you to see payoff, but they're safe. Get many of those. Get them, a lot of them for your kids, because when they get to a certain age, they can cash those out and use that for their life. Whether it be for college, books, trips, whatever. They can use it for whatever they want. There's penalties if you cash them in early. So make sure that you're okay with losing that money for a while. The other thing that I think is very, very smart is land. Owning land is key. Some people want to get into the whole flipping of homes, and flipping homes can pay off very well. You can buy a house for very, very cheap, put in a little bit of money and a lot of sweat equity, and get a lot of money. But usually there's a lot of things that are wrong that you have to fix. And if you don't know how to fix them, you're going to have to hire people to do it. And that adds to the cost. You have to know about permits and how to work with that. And you have to check and make sure that you have a licensed contractor. Because if not, that's a problem that falls onto you. It falls onto them, but it falls onto you. So flipping of homes can be a little bit tricky. Buying homes and then selling them, homes that don't need a lot of work and you're selling them, yeah, but you're going to have a lot of money to do that. So the easier thing to do is to buy land, have that land, hold on to it, and then over time, grow your wealth. You may want to continue buying more pieces of land. You can treat it like Monopoly. You know, every time you get an income tax check, go and buy land someplace. Have several acres of land, because when you think about it, you can go to a bank and say, hey, you know, for the past 5 years, I've taken my income tax check and I've bought land all over my state. And if they ask you how much land do you own? Oh, I don't know. It's probably like 10 acres of land, because you bought an acre here, 5 acres there, 3 acres here, 2 acres there. And it's all over the place, but the bank doesn't care. So they will take the county will give an assessment of the value of the land, and they'll say, okay, well, the land is showing that it's probably worth $80,000. We'll give you a loan for this amount, or for a certain set amount. And you may be surprised. So to me, these are things that make sense. I said get a passport, which should be as automatic as a driver's license. Owning land, even before you own a house, owning land is something that you should definitely do. I don't care if it's an acre. Own some land. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, I will see you. Take care.